Okay, we're back live. Sorry for the inconvenience. We had a little smell that was concerning to some folks about their grinding down the basement. So we're going to continue with Mike Smith of the DMV bill. Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, so when we left off on section 32, which has been closed. And I believe we are now moving forward to changes in section 36, which is the implementation of the Department of Motor Vehicles Modernization project.
I know maybe we had already closed out 35, but can you remind me of what we're doing here? We're creating a study of the whole truck permits. I don't remember this.
Yes. So this was in last year's miscellaneous bill. This is the study for oversized, overweight vehicles. And I believe this mimics the same language that was in S64.
In section 12 of S64.
Yes.
And what's the goal? The goal
So
of this.
the goal of the language, so Wanda Manoli, Commissioner DMV, last year in the House, there was a lot of discussion to automatically regulate and change the weights and the permitting. This is really a study for us to look at the larger weights. And it was, the House presented it. We opposed it last year because it was being more specific that we shall. The modifications on the study, we added that actually to the miscellaneous bill proposals this year to do the study. The industry needs, we need to evaluate increasing the weights.
And the one difference from the last time you saw this language, you can see on page 44, line 5, the last period is highlighted. This is where there was a subsection C that required the DMV to report back on the development of the municipal permitting portal. And because the DMV said they would do it, they didn't need to tell them to report on it.
That was what Kitchell did. Kitchell loves to get rid of reports.
I do. When you don't want to make a decision, you ask for a report so much.
Nobody reads it.
And they're going to report back to us anyway. Okay, I remember now. Is this, but this is the same as the $5 town permit process thing? Because that's different.
No, this is to increase the permitting to, I think it's 107 and 117,000 pounds, which is similar to some of the surrounding jurisdictions. This is something that was in the House's rural omnibus bill last year, I think. It's being pushed a bit to the forest product.
But they would still, we would still have that, regardless of what that total is, 107 or 117, you would still have to file for that town $5 permit.
Correct, because this is for state roads.
This is so.
And this is also just a study to get information.
Right.
It says, is there a nexus here with the bill that Senator White?
Yeah, so this is section 12 of S64 with the caveat that that language does still include the subsection C that requires the DMV to report back on the development of the municipal portal. But aside from that, it is a recent deletion by this committee. This would be taking something from S64.
So you're looking to see if it should be increased from the current 107, 117 to something larger.
Right, and yes, and looking at how could we support that industry with axles and different configurations instead of just saying we're going to increase it. So it's really expanding the discussion and doing a more detailed evaluation how and when, how we could support and when we should support this increased weight for that industry.
So just to make sure I'm clear, then what this section does here in 35 is really one of the sections that was in this other bill that's being put here with the opportunity to do the necessary analysis really, back in terms of what are the options here on weights.
Yeah, so it's
All right, so we can tell Senator White we did at least one thing.
The class 2 highways is part of what we'll look at optimization.
so again, that's at a minimum the examination needs to address, but it's not necessarily going to be real change in any way.
And the DMV is looking at the town permit that was gonna be reported, section C, we took out because you were already gonna report on it.
No, that was on the e-permitting, not on the development of
Right.
rural.
So that it's a better system. Easier for the towns.
Our goal is to truly create an opportunity.
Their goal is not to make it more complicated.
For municipalities to opt into the system to issue their permits.
And that's different than the antiquated system that they use to post their roads.
It's doesn't, well, I guess it would align with posting the roads if we were successful in implementing.
Correct, because it would bring the municipalities into the system, in which case that would
Right.
include that.
Okay, because this was a system, a question I asked yesterday.
Yeah.
So that, all that IT would, that part would be upgraded when you guys do the big IT, as you're doing this big IT.
The posting of the roads is not.
Not posting the roads, but that the town has to say, these are the roads that are posted, that we're just mirroring the state thing, and they have to go in every year, and I just keep hearing that it seems like.
So this is one of the interfaces that would be built
This
in this
would,
system.
in order for the municipalities to issue the permits and have all of the information in one place, we would need to incorporate the town postings that you're talking about into that system. Otherwise, we're still using two systems.
Right, so it would be upgraded.
It needs to be part of that.
And you're gonna report on the progress to the e-permitting, which is part of this upgrade.
Correct, but for the record, we have not, the team has not talked about making and the RFI is almost done, so we need to go back and look at that. We have not discussed that, the element that you're referring to as part of the e-permitting. So we will go back and explore that, and we will send you an email.
And I could put you in touch with town clerks that think it's really onerous and not just like silly busy work. If you want to hear that.
The town clerks were here, that was not on their legislative priorities.
Well, I could bring in some town clerks that say that it's on their
I'd
priority.
bring that up.
They weren't in here,
Yeah, the municipal clerks and treasurers, they were here,
not in this committee.
not here, but they were at the State House, and that's where I got the brochure. It's more on voting.
Yeah,
Good, put you two on the committee.
Just have all this stuff to read.
All right, okay, so, and I think this is the last section that has some changes. This is section 36 on the implementation of the Department of Motor Vehicle Modernization Project. And really, it's just some wordsmithing that Anthea has done to add in motor vehicle processes related to, and that carries through the next 2 pages.
Where you brought up the fact that you didn't think operations was necessarily the right word to say what would be modified. And the important thing to note here is that it would be the DMV processes that are inconsistent with statute or rule, that they would then have this process for modifying them, and that's going to JTOC for that to JTOC's jurisdiction. So the change really should be from the word.
yeah.
Better.
Yeah, it's a little bit. Do you want this open? Because we got fresh air out here. Do you want to leave this open for a few minutes?
Right.
It's too
A
noisy.
little bit? Okay.
So the change is really just from operations to processes.
Just stand there waving the door.
That's what you do.
That's a good job, Senator.
I can do that.
Who is they?
Firefighters, we're in
Oh.
aerospace.
Oh.
Go to UVM all the time.
Yeah.
Oh
my God.
Does that count as one of the times that he brings up?
You can hold a sergeant of arms sign the same time you do it. There we go. Chair's gonna kick me off this committee.
Oh my God.
It's better, right?
We don't need poster signs. We have a law or ordinance on signs, please.
All right.
Yeah, he wanted
Okay,
to.
hold the door.
Good, good. Good.
Yes, please.
Close it.
Yes, please.
Yeah, too much noise.
I believe that finishes the bill. The other sections have been.
I don't drink, but. I
Closed out.
Yes.
Which means that actually this is a finalized product here,
There's
unless
one,
we add more sections.
well, there's one other section that I believe is with the editors.
So,
And
two things.
that's Senator Chittenden.
I think there are a few outstanding member proposals that are out the road. But on this document you have, I just want to highlight one thing that Deputy Commissioner that did not mention, and it's a very subtle thing. But if you go to section 3 on page 2, you'll see that this mobile identification, what used to be the mobile driver's license language, used to be further down in the bill. The reason why it's now section 3 is because I changed the numbering of it. So it's now 23, yeah, it is 23 USA section 9, as opposed to being added under the driver's license subchapter. It's now under the general provisions portion of Title 23. And I'm just highlighting that because I think that is yet another way that this language is shifting away from this is a driver's license on your electronic device to this is a mobile identification with limited functionality on your electronic device. And it still has that same language about it being optional. The other change is that it says on the top of page 4, in terms of the shalls and the shall nots. So if issued, the mobile identification shall, nothing has changed except for the addition of subdivision 4, not be a substitute for an individual producing a non-mobile credential upon request. And to use an oft-used phrase in this building, I think this is a Delson's Defenders approach, because it still says in many, many places of statute, you need to have a driver's license. And then here we're saying, this is not a driver's license, and it is not a substitute for ever producing the non-mobile credential if you're asked for it. So if you were able to prove with your mobile identification that you're over the age of 21, but you go into a store and they want to see that you're over the age of 21, can still say, show me your physical driver's license, or show me your passport, or show me something else that verifies your age. So those are just the 2 things that I would highlight in addition to everything that Mike has walked through.
Well, that seems to be consistent with our discussion. I think the general public would not have picked up that nuance.
I cannot. It was very, very subtle. I changed one number and it puts it entirely.
Unless they're reading the statutes for nighttime pleasure. Okay. But it does make sense. Is that the same part of the statute that has the non-licensed identification language authorization?
Let's check.
I should like it. That would be enough.
603, right?
Drivers are at 115.
This is where you have the enhanced driver's license language. There's just a lot of random stuff in chapter 1 of Title 23. But I believe the non-driver identification card is in chapter 3, 115. So that is in a different sort of general provision part. You could put this language in chapter 3 as well, but I would say that this is consistently putting this language, that's something other than driver's license, in a chapter other than chapter 9, the chapter on operator's licenses. And that's where this language was in your earlier drafts of the bill. If the committee would like, I could certainly have this be 115B, so it's next to the non-driver identification card. I thought putting it in chapter 1 made a little more sense at the top.
I defer to your judgment on it. I just was wondering. That was more not because I had a specific.
But good memory that that is in a different part of statute.
Oh, my memory's a junkyard, you know. It's amazing what's been.
Right, but it's a very organized junkyard. Like everything's in rows and labeled across.
Sometimes I have to flip through a lot of files to get it, but.
We're there all day, don't you?
I do, yes, I'm learning lots.
Okay, what else do we have?
That'd be.
Go ahead.
So I did have some language that came out of what I thought was their testimony from last year from FACOS on motorcycle mufflers. I don't know if you remember, you talked about a stamp. I was working with Anthea. She was, of course, great. He's always got me language right away, but then I sat on it for a while. So I just sent it to Tony this morning and to Wanda. It includes the motorcycle muffler language and then some language that I got from Noise Pollution Clearinghouse that works with other states on language that other states have used to deal with the mufflers, which is just about, it uses a reference to a decibel limit, but not trying to have people have decibel meters or anything like that. So I thought that was not gonna be something we wanted to do, but it just says you can't, the muffler has to be to this standard. And you can't take the muffler out, which is already part of the regulation.
What standard?
I'll send you the language. 69 decibels is what was what.
So how does that affect the motorcycle industry?
The motorcycle is just about the stamp, which is a national regulation anyway. They're supposed to have the
Like the
stamp.
snowmobile, wouldn't have that
Yes.
stamp.
So it would just change when you go get your motorcycle inspected, if the muffler has to have the stamp on it. If it doesn't have the stamp, then it doesn't get inspected.
So that's really consistent with what we did with the snowmobile.
I think so. I wasn't involved when we did the snowmobile.
Where?
Yeah.
Yeah, we did it on Zoom.
No,
You were just not mentally involved.
Yeah.
Maybe it's there in your archive. You gotta
Right.
Flip through.
Right, I haven't spent the time to look though, that part's.
So where would the opposition come from this? Anybody?
I think the opposition would be maybe that it's another thing you're adding to the safety inspection that they have to look at the muffler. One thing that Tony or Director Fakos said was that there are some cars, some high performance cars like Camaros and things that they have a bypass by the factory. So you can bypass the noise part of the muffler so that you have more power. That makes it louder, but if you're doing like legal drag racing on a factory car, you would want to bypass that muffler. So with this regulation, make those factory vehicles somehow compliant. Like even though they're brand new, they might not pass inspection. And that's something.
They wouldn't have the label on them, because it seems
This
like.
is not about the motorcycles. This is about the cars. So there's two parts. One's about the car noise.
But you said you could switch it off or on, so.
Yeah, but the fact that they have this switch does that raise a problem with the regulation?
Do you want to follow this up with do it?
I just
We don't
didn't
have
like-
to run this through this morning.
Right, well, I just received the email, we'll take a look at it, but it does add motor vehicle and motorcycle, so I do wanna look at look at all of the language.
I think the motor vehicle part is probably the part you're more concerned, because my understanding the motorcycle part is just getting us in compliant and lining us up with other states.
And then what I'm committed to do is to reach back to Senator Pershlik and Anthea, and if we're good to go with it, then we don't need to come back.
And if, and I don't know what, if we want to get, I was late doing it, we could put it in the.
No, I don't want to finalize this morning because of Sunday. I just want to make sure we're on board. If anything else we need for information, then we'll have a quick meeting.
To add to.
Yeah, well, I want to make sure we clear the air.
Yeah, I already put this away, so.
Today,
Our clerk's ready to.
I was really a clerk.
did we address any of Senator White's concerns? I heard us, we did one.
We did the truck rates, weights, and it seems like if we do something on the noise, at least for the motorcycles and looking at the automobile language,
Okay, just
that
so
would be the second.
the other items that she has.
The child care seats.
Yeah, I wondered if that seemed like something.
I can give you a little bit of information about that. In November of 2018, the American Academy of Pediatrics came out with recommendations. There were 5 of them, and I would say that the 15, I'm not sure if this is going to be 15 words, the 15-word summation of the recommendation is you should keep your child rear facing until the manufacturer recommendation of the seat says that they can be forward facing. Vermont's law, and I might butcher this, is the later of a year or 20 pounds. So that would be the main way that Vermont's law is inconsistent with the American Academy of Pediatrics recommendation. The American Academy of Pediatric recommendations went on to say you should be, in a 5-point harness, rear facing or forward facing until the manufacturer weight limits. Some cars said very, very high weight and height limits. It raises the question of, is a law enforcement officer going to say, pull out your manufacturer, the manual of the car seat and tell me how much your child weighs? But that is a way that Vermont is not necessarily having followed suit with these 2018 recommendations. So some of what Senator White has proposed would take portions of the recommendations and put them into statute, and then the outreach campaign building off of what exists currently for safe seat.
Well, how would people know they're in compliance? there's no inspection of that car seat, right?
You would need to look at your manual and weigh your time and measure your time.
So they're just.
When I had my first child, had to mess with these things, the first thing I did was call them Vermont State Troopers, and actually they had to come on down and make sure.
They do that option.
Fire.
So I like the idea of synchronizing with the manufacturers rather than they overriding Vermont's rules.
Is there a way to keep it, it sounds like in so many areas, standards get changed and recommendations. So is there something that we could put in language that in fact updates what that standard is without going back and making a statutory change?
So I
So we
am,
can anticipate the fact that we're gonna have different standards or recommendations in the future.
so I'm not aware of anything in federal law that has requirements on what an individual adult responsible for a
So what
child.
does our current law say?
It says like 20 pounds or a year.
20 pounds per year.
Yeah, and then it says you need to be, it talks about being in the rear of the seat and you need to be in a car seat to a particular age. And the seatbelt law is different for if you're under 18 or over 18. I think you would have problems linking to what is in essence like an organization making
No,
recommendations.
no,
It's not something that's been promulgated, it's not something that's in the
No, no, no.
CFR.
Yes.
I'd like to add to this, you are creating, the civil penalty.
Yeah.
In-
There's a commercial.
Right, so this is an increase. Or it's an additional.
Well, so it's
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong one. I apologize. I was on the idling.
there might be a civil penalty for being added for car seats. It also could be that it's just a deviation from the default of a maximum.
We don't have a civil penalty now, is that correct?
If you don't specify a civil penalty, it defaults to the statutory maximum of 1,000.
What does she want to do with the idling? I heard something about idling.
No, it's not. Okay, sorry.
Oh, so we don't want to do 1,000 for somebody.
So there is no proposed change for the car seat violations. It would be staying as they are in existing statute, which is, and this is on page 6 of S64, $25 for a first violation, $50 for a second violation, and $100 for third and subsequent violations.
So it's modest, but I think under the circumstances, I wouldn't want to have a very stiff penalty.
No, I don't think people understand. I think they all do their best to make sure they get a safe seat when they buy it or what they do, but if there's no
And oftentimes,
Section.
installment is challenging and,
on the cars.
yeah, and sometimes you discover that it's been installed improperly, not just because it's confusing. So that's why they have have your seatbelt days coming, car seat.
It's
So-
also adding language that is from the age of 8 to 17. And it's specific language on the use of a shoulder strap as applicable and federally approved child passenger. And it's saying, which shall not be installed in front of the active airbag and shall if possible be installed in the rear of the motor vehicle for a child under 13 years of age. So that is new language. And if possible, ride the rear seat of the motor vehicle. And so it being in the DMV miscellaneous bill, I immediately go to driver's ed, I go to the age of 17, I go to drivers who are getting their permits at the age of 15. And I don't see us being the ones responsible to manage this, but it would be language coming out that we would have to expand on. And that is a significant change that I think you have to consider. And not every vehicle, and not everyone drives a new vehicle. And this is one of the things that not every, and I know it says if the airbag exists, but we also have individuals that have single seat trucks. And I know it's saying it's if, I think that's one of the modifications. It could be confusing to the public and, and then I just want to say section 4 of the bill then adds language that does an outreach campaign. And our comment on this is that we would disseminate the information through email, a dedicated web page for car seat safety that is linked to websites of the Agency of Transportation, Department of Health, social media.
Seems like highway safety should be in there too.
Well, they are particular in this language, in the study, they are mentioned. And I just want to comment, we don't have emails. I'm gonna just be really sensitive because I think people always come back to the DMV. I just got distracted, I'm sorry. There's a young boy that was in the window.
Two of those just popped up.
Um,
You saw two.
Oh, that's
Yeah, I did.
wonderful.
Yeah,
That's yours.
yeah, probably. They are right here.
How did they get up?
Somebody left it.
They're all,
Wait, they're not unsupervised. I have,
he's holding his arms.
I have to take the sick one home when we're done here. So I brought a sick child to take a sick child somewhere else. And I'm sorry that they just interrupted me either.
I don't know,
I think that
free
was
range
better than
childhood,
seatbelt.
very educational.
So what are we gonna do on the seatbelts?
Is there anything that we should put in now, recognizing that there's some things that are gonna take more time? So you said that all we have is one, say that again,
Okay.
1 year or?
So current law says no person shall operate a motor vehicle other than a type 1 school bus in this state unless every occupant under 18 is properly restrained in a federally approved child passenger restraining system or a safety belt. So that's different from our adult seatbelt law. So it's saying outright you need to be in a car seat or you need to be in the seatbelt if you're under the age of 18. It then goes on to say that all children under 1 or weighing less than 20 pounds, regardless of age, shall be restrained in a rear-facing position. And this is the one part where it talks about active airbags. Properly secured in a federally approved car seat, which shall not be installed in front of an active airbag. And the addition would be, and shall, if possible, be installed in a rear seat of the motor vehicle. So if you have a rear seat, then it would be possible to put the car seat.
That's
in the
our
rear
current
seat.
language.
It's basically the current language. The only addition would be, and shall, if possible, be installed in a rear seat of the motor vehicle.
Well, that's not a problem, is it? Not just the addition of that rear seat if possible.
No, I mean, and we're not, I think we haven't taken a position on the language. I think we're identifying areas that we're concerned, specific, or identifying areas of the language that it's really not clear on the explanation.
You wanna work on that, just so before we reconvene again in this bill, or?
I mean, I'm happy to work with the DMV on this, but I think they're saying that they don't really think there should be a change. So I think I at least need direction from the committee as to how much, if at all, of Senator White's proposal you actually want to try and move forward.
We're all looking at change. I don't know where to go on this one.
The study, and I will say, you could have the outreach campaign even if you didn't make the changes to statute. And then my question would be, is the outreach campaign all that different from what is currently being done with the Safe in the Seat, which I correct name of the website, because the Department of Health already is doing outreach on car seats, which is why people like Senator Chittenden know about going to have a vehicle be inspected by the police or a fire station.
So in some ways, it's redundant. It's almost, I mean, in other words, it's asking for something to be done that we're already doing in a systematic way.
It would probably be more necessary to do an outreach campaign if you made substantial changes to the statute, because it's an opportunity to tell people, hey, we changed the statute, now you need to be in the rear seat if possible, for example.
If we put that in, rear seat if possible, which has been out there for a safety perspective, we'd need a whole new campaign to tell people to do that.
I'm not saying you would, I'm saying you probably don't need the outreach campaign if you don't actually change the statute. And the more you change the statute, probably the more value there is in the outreach.
I guess my question was, if we put in backseat if possible, that's it. Couldn't that be incorporated in what is already happening now?
It probably would be without you having to say.
Who enforces this anyway?
Yeah.
Who does it?
It's only.
And I believe it is a part of.
What the health department's doing now, maybe?
It is consistent with the recommendations that came out in 2018 and probably the recommendations that came out earlier, that if possible, you should always be in the rear seat of the vehicle.
I think who would use this are the state troopers, that when they have to do this, they're gonna read the statute. So if they read this here and then they're doing one of those safety sessions or meeting with people to show them car seats, they would then have this front of mind. Am I wrong?
Yeah, and I think
You leave the
the-
hospital with a baby, they just take over the stuff, you leave the hospital.
I think there was an option to do that. The rear facing ones are really hard too. Those are not easy. You gotta get in there, knee on it. It's just very difficult.
I guess what I'm saying is, to what extent, if we added that rear facing whatever, if possible, is that in fact making the language in the statute consistent with the very educational information that the Department of Health is getting out? In other words, if they're already recommending that that's what you do, if possible, then it doesn't seem like it's such a big thing to have our statute align with what that package looks like. And maybe that's what we ought to just check. Does the Department of Health include in their training, or whoever else is doing training, that that's how you should position the child seat?
So you want information on whether or not, how statute would need to change to reflect current Department of Health dissemination of recommendations surrounding car seats.
Yeah.
Okay, I would need to go and look at Key Safe to see if you might want to hear from someone from the Department of Health, would be that it's probably somewhere between current statute and S64. That would be my guess based on how I looked at this.
All I was suggesting is that one.
Well, I mean, I will say that you would then have language that said you should, if possible, be installed in a rear seat of the motor vehicle. The question then becomes, should you have that same language for the children that are 20 pounds to 8 years of age? Because that is also a current AAP recommendation that is not reflected in statute. And then you might be creating a, because if you're specifying it for one and not specifying it for the other, are you creating an implication that you don't need to be in the rear seat if possible, if you're over the age of 1 or 20 pounds? So you're probably going to want to be consistent in whether or not you're
But we
saying.
could find out what the health department is recommending now, and then so why don't we do that first? Oh, Michelle?
I Googled it.
Yeah.
So for the record, Michelle Boomhauer, Agency of Transportation, on the Department of Health's website, under the Seat Smart program, the Department of Health says children should remain in their rear-facing convertible or forward-facing car seat until they reach the highest weight or height allowed by the car seat manufacturer. If you have questions, reach out to your child passenger safety technician. And there's more. Yeah, that's the sort of overall.
I will say that that is something that is probably very difficult for law enforcement to enforce, which is why it might make sense as a recommendation being disseminated by the Department of Health and not something that you put in statute.
Can we come back to this for the T-bill after crossover if we want, and then just
Yeah.
punt on this for now?
All right,
I'd like to.
I would move on, this is very touchy.
right. Maybe there's something we can do. I'm not
Okay,
sure.
we only got a couple more minutes left.
Yeah, before we go.
We gotta go, so anything else pertaining to this bill today?
Well, we had the speed limit on roads that are not posted, but they're dirt roads. And right now, if the town hasn't posted them, at the default is to 50 miles an hour. So speed limit's the same as it would be for Route 2 or Route 5, or Route 4, 7 for dirt roads. And so there would be I'd like to have the default to something other than 50 miles an hour. And so that was one of the request, and there was a House bill that, sort of along the same lines. I think it was, the default would be to 35.
It was a short form bill and I got new language. I think that language has been already been edited, but I could certainly get it from Mike for everybody to look at.
So that was, and it came from someone who lives on a dirt road and was very surprised when the state police said that's the default. So if the sign is down or there isn't one posted by the town, then 50 miles an hour, which does seem a little excessive for a dirt road, but that's.
I would just wonder. I'll just say it. I just wondering if we're just stepping into some towns that want 50 miles an hour and haven't posted it. I wonder if we could say that the default is 35 unless it's posted and posted to, to a higher speed.
So I think the language that I included said if it is unpaved and unposted, the default is. And unposted was specified, not posted with a speed limit, to say what unposted means. So it would not prohibit a higher speed limit. It would set the default in that two-part test. It needs to both be unpaved and it needs to not be
But
posted.
to get past the 35, the town would actually have to post it to the higher speed. I like that.
It wouldn't prohibit it.
I like that better. I don't know if we have enough time to get that in this part of the bill, if we would just put it in the bigger bill.
That normally speed limits go in this bill, don't they?
I would say I tell the house this all the time, like it's more of an art than a science as to what goes.
We can do whatever we want because we cannot withstand anything we want to. So that was just, it's pretty straightforward. What should be the default? Should it be 50 or should it be 35 on an unposted, unpaid?
Two things, I know we don't have time for it, but one is a speed limit related thing, which has to do with paved roads, and I would like to propose that I can go into greater depth at another time, but that I don't think has been fleshed out, nor has anybody officially blessed it, so I'd love to just know if there's opposition to it, but I can explain it in more time. The other one, I shared with Wanda and Mike Smith this weekend, and they seem fine with it. It's from Chief Burke relating to that, and so I guess that's with the editors now. It just has some additional language on the mobile ID for police officers being pulled over, so it seems to make sense to the most important parties around, and
It's for registration.
It's for registration. It aligns, I think, with some of the
It
language in
aligns.
the mobile identification. So,
Maybe, Andrea, I should send that to Lee, and, because we really are talking about unpaved and unposted roads, so see if that's something.
So I think what I'm gonna do is, for everyone that I'm working with in this room on language, I will get it either edited or edited into you if it's already been edited. It doesn't need to be re-edited. You can send it to the people you think need to see it. You will then have it. And as soon as you are ready, you can get it to Mike. And I can talk the committee through it if need be, or you can talk to me.
Okay.
But I will make sure everyone has their link.
We're done.
Do you want someone else to